Hi, hello. I was invited out to play Pokemon Legends Z-A early in Paris. Pokemon invited me to the Eiffel Tower. So before I talk about what I did, just a shout out to the Pokemon Company International, who paid for my flight and hotel and accommodations and all that. So now that that's out of the way, I'm here to talk to you about Legends Z-A and what I've played. They let me play an hour of the game that was broken into 4 different parts. So I'll go through all of the parts here. And if I'm looking off to the screen, it's because I have notes. We'll go through this and I'll give my impressions in between of what I think and how I feel. So the first part of the demo that we got to play in the 1 hour session was a wild zone. I don't remember exactly what number of the wild zone is. So in the wild zone, it was like part of the city, and there were a couple Baneri, a couple Houndour that were around. This wild zone had levels, and you could go down a ladder, and there was just a lower level under the bridges that had almost like a little river going through. You couldn't get into the water at all, but down there was an alpha binnacle, and then normal binnacle, and then a couple Magikarp were down there. The binnacle was level 30. Talk about this whole zone. There were 3 alpha Pokemon. So there was the level 30 binnacle, alpha Houndoom, and then the alpha Pikachu on the roof. So a couple takeaways. One, if you liked the catching in Legends Arceus, that is back. But I don't think, from everywhere I saw in the menus, I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but it didn't seem like there was catch 10 Magikarp or use 5 rock throws using your binnacle. It didn't seem like there was any in-depth Pokedex completion as there was in Legends Arceus. What I did notice is that the Pokedex in the game seemed very similar to other Pokedex, like almost kind of similar to the Pokedex in X and Y. It kind of had that blue and white Ycom feel to the Pokedex, and it just had the standard Pokedex entries, sizes. It said like Magikarp is a derpy Pokemon. I did notice that while the catching was there and felt relatively the same, there was like still the back strikes and everything that Legends Arceus had. It didn't seem like this was going to be a game where you caught 20 Baneri to progress something in the game. And the thing that I guess I did notice from Legends Arceus to Legends Z-A is the alphas in this game were more aggressive. The Binnacle was on a floor below, and the Houndoom was on the main floor, and then the Pikachu was on the roof. And it seemed like they would all follow you, and you could have 2 or 3 of them bothering you at the same time, which I don't think really happened that much in Legends Arceus unless you were specifically in an outbreak. A couple things that I can think of off the top of my head is there didn't seem to be any fall damage. I think there were 2 or 3 buildings you could go up, and I tried jumping off the buildings different ways, and every time the Rotom phone caught me before I fell, so that was very similar to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where the Rotom phone would catch you. Seemed to catch you every time, so I couldn't reproduce any fall damage. Down near the Binnacle, there was like some sludge. It almost looked like leftover muck. If you specifically attacked that with a water attack, it would clear it up, which was kind of cool. Almost like a HM, except you didn't need an HM. You just needed a water attack on any Pokemon, and that seemed to clear that up. There was just an item behind there. There are 2 types of items you could pick up. There are the Pokeball items that everyone knows, and you have to walk up to those and press A. And then there are like the sparkly items that you would see on the ground in like Scarlet and Violet that your Pokemon would auto pick up if you're walking with your Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. Your character just picks these up automatically when you step over them. So there were still interactive elements. There were like purple crystals on the wall or the floor that you could have a Pokemon mine. Similar to in Legends Arceus, if you threw a Pokemon at a tree or a rock, it would get materials out of that. So that kind of still existed. In that wild zone, I think they're called wild zones, there were, at least in that specific wild zone with the Pikachu, Binnacle, and the Houndoom alphas, there was no trainer battles at all. Catching wise, it's hard to say whether catching is harder or easier than Legends Arceus. What I mean by harder or easier is just that a lot of the Binnacles didn't want to stay in the Pokeball right away, even if I was using a Great Ball. Now you can attack them in like real time. You can throw a Pokeball right away when they're at full health. You can do it when they're at half health, and then if you knock them out to 0, they stick around for a little bit so you can catch them there. A lot of the times it felt like I did have to bring the Pokemon down to 0, specifically with the Alpha Binnacle, which I spent the most time on. I think the Nintendo rep probably thought I was like, this was the first time I ever played a video game because I just kept throwing Pokeballs at the Alpha Binnacle, but I was legitimately trying to see how easy it was to catch at different levels, or maybe I was just being unlucky. But what I did notice that happened, that is actually like my first minor complaint. I don't actually think it's minor. I think it did really bother me. The game will do this thing where when it's nighttime, it will like fade out and pop up that it's like nighttime now. And then it will do the same thing for morning because the game's running on a clock, and I'm not sure how long it takes from daytime to nighttime or nighttime to daytime. But I got the Alpha Binnacle down to 5 HP or 2 HP, whatever. It was like one hit away. And then it popped up like nighttime was starting. And after that little cutscene went away, the Alpha Binnacle had like full HP again. It was annoying in that sense of like, oh, I cleared out all the regular Binnacle, and now I'm working on the Alpha Binnacle, and because the game notified me of a time shift, it reset like the Pokemon in the zone. So like that was like a minor annoyance that I could see, like, well, I had that minor annoyance, but I could see like other players having like that annoyance of like, is it even worth, like, can I defeat this Pokemon, not spend so much time on this if I knew I was on like an in-game time limit of we're shifting over to nighttime now, and that's going to reset the Pokemon in this area. I did die to the Binnacle. I wanted to see what happened if I died, and it took me to a nearest Pokemon Center. It didn't seem like I lost any items or any money when I died, but the Nintendo rep told me to fly back to that specific wild zone where everything seemed reset again when I flew back there. I only did one of the zones in the city. The second part of the demo was like the battle zone, the nighttime stuff. So if you listen to the podcast, I think I said a couple months ago, it seemed very much like you were going to be catching during the day and battling at night. And I don't know if that's the whole game. I think if you watch one of the trailers, it looks like there is a trainer battle on the roof during the day, and I'm sure that does exist. They set this demo up to you catch during the day and then you battle at night. So while I think there probably are some exceptions, I think that is like the gist of the game that you're going into. At night in the battle zone, when it gets dark and the gates are red instead of green, it said that you need 5,000 points to battle a leader, and then the game encouraged you to use sneak attacks. I'm pretty sure everyone I battled had at least 2 Pokemon. I can't think of anyone that had 1 Pokemon or anyone that had 3 Pokemon. But there was also like field research. I'm going to call it field research. There's probably a proper name for it. But if you play Pokemon Go, you know how like you can pick up field research when you spin a Pokestop, and it's like catch 5 Pokemon, get 3 great throws in a row, or use 5 super effective attacks. It had that pretty much in the game. So that's like the easiest comparison I could have. And you could stack them. So for example, one of the field researches was defeat a Pokemon with a water type move. And then another field research was defeat a Pokemon with like a 1-hit KO off a sneak attack. So you could hold multiple of those field researches. So since I was holding 2 of those, I was able to sneak attack with a water attack, and then it counted both of them. So you could go ahead and like pick those up. During the night portion, there were no Pokemon to catch. Again, I only did 1 night portion and 1 day portion. So I don't know if there are night areas of the city where you could catch. But there was no battles during my day portion, and there was no catching during my night portion. Just what I played of the very small part of this game, which leads to like my thoughts on the battling. I think I said on the podcast, I didn't love the battling. The city seemed really small, and it was really crowded, or like not crowded, but tight. And this part of the city was like way more open. There still are things in the environment that your Pokemon can like stand behind or interact with, I guess. Like there was a point where a Pokemon used, I think it was like Gust or like Wing Attack or something, and my Pokemon just happened to be behind a bench, and it hit the bench instead of my Pokemon. So that was like kind of cool that you can use the environment to your advantage. I told the Nintendo rep this. I've told all of you guys this. I really, really like turn-based battles. Huge fan of the Final Fantasy games growing up, and eventually Final Fantasy changed from turn-based to more action-based. Huge fan of like the Persona games. I really like the Bravely Default series. I just like turn-based battles. So for me, removing something I enjoy is like fine, but I can't help but think, man, I miss turn-based. I'm not sold on the new battle system yet. I will say that it's hard to grasp with, not because like the controls are difficult or because like the mechanics themselves are hard. I think it's hard because you're teaching yourself something new, almost like playing a new board game. And it's like, well, it's similar to these board games, but you have to like read the rules, and you read the rules and you're like, that doesn't really make sense. And everyone's like, just play it. It'll make sense when you play it. And yeah, it does start to make more sense when you play it, but moves in the game just do different things. So a similar example would be if you played Legends Arceus and you use Stealth Rock. How Stealth Rock worked in Legends Arceus was not how it worked at all in the other main series games, right? Stealth Rock is usually like an entry hazard. It doesn't do any damage until Pokemon switches in. And then in Legends Arceus, it like went on the ground. It started damaging like every turn right away. So if you think about how Stealth Rock works in Legends Arceus and how different it was, apply that to pretty much every move in Legends Z-A. The opponent's Pokemon used Mist. I think it was Mist against me, and a huge like cloud of smoke came up in the alleyway, and I didn't know what it did. Well, one, it was the first time I saw Mist in that game, and I was like, I don't know if I probably shouldn't walk into that cloud, but maybe their Pokemon has an advantage in that cloud, but that Pokemon has like 5 HP left, and I'm just going to knock it out, and now the battle's over, so I don't know what the Mist did because I just didn't have enough time to interact with it. And that's how I felt about like a lot of the moves. It's like, I'm not exactly sure what's happening here because the move doesn't work like it used to. It feels hard because you have to relearn a bunch of things specific to this game. Another example would be like Toxic Spikes. I use Toxic Spikes and it actually puts like 6 spikes in front of me. I didn't know if my Pokemon could get poisoned by walking through Toxic Spikes, but I assumed if their Pokemon walked through, they would get poisoned. But again, I knocked out the Pokemon so fast that like the battlefield cleared and we just moved on. I don't really know what it did. And I still don't know what specific moves did because there was like not a lot of indication while in an action-based battle, right? So like going back to old Pokemon games, I would have all the time in the world before I hit my move because it was my turn, then their turn, and then my turn. There was just like a lot of uncertainty. And that's why I use the analogy of like, it's like learning a board game and then being like, I'm not sure what this is going to do, but I'm just going to play it. And then I'll go back and look it up after the fact and hope we're doing it right. So the battles were fine. I think I will enjoy the battles more once I start understanding what things do. And I think a lot of people will probably feel that way. Is it worth using Mist or Toxic Spikes or Growl or are these moves in past Pokemon games different enough to use? Because I would maybe argue that not a lot of people use Stealth Rock during story mode of any past Pokemon game, but Stealth Rock was more usable during Legends Arceus because they could see that effect in real time. The game really encouraged you to sneak attack, and it almost had like this Metal Gear Solid eye tracker at the top. So when you got closer to a trainer, it would almost fill up, and if you went behind like a bench or back around the corner, it would decrease. The eyeball tracker doesn't seem to care about your Pokemon. It seems to only care about you. So your Pokemon could like be out in the alleyway and you could be behind the corner and the eye tracker would be small. That didn't seem to matter at all. But the sneak attacks definitely made each of the battles go by quicker. The game seems to, and this even goes back to like battling wild Pokemon with like the Binnacle. The game seems to really want you to use super effective moves or to understand what is super effective against you. So going back to that Binnacle fight, the Binnacle was level 30. All of my Pokemon were 20. and then the Gyarados was 30. So the Gyarados would do good damage against the Binnacle, but because Gyarados is weak to rock, the Binnacle could ultimately two-shot the Gyarados, even though they were both the same level. Sorry, the Binnacle could one-shot pretty much anything at level 20. I think people experience this also in like Legends Arceus with getting one-shot or getting two-shot, but that was more because of like the Agile Strong system, where they could like Agile and attack, and then because they Agile, they could attack again, and that could like finish you off, or they could just one Strong Style you once, and that could finish you off. There was none of that, obviously, but it did seem to heavily play on type effectiveness, and 10 levels definitely seemed to have mattered. But like, I think 10 levels mattered in old Pokemon games, so like I wouldn't like think too heavily on that. Once you got enough battle points in your night mode, you can then challenge a leader battle, team leader. I can't remember what they were called, but that was the third part of the demo. That felt this closest to like a gym battle. You were inside. It almost reminded me of Larry's gym, like theme wise. Well, minus the restaurant, but like, actually, maybe it wasn't a restaurant. It definitely reminded me of the inside of Larry's gym. But this team leader had 3 Pokemon. They love to throw up Protect. Again, the action-based stuff kind of throws me off of a lot of it seems very timing, and I don't know if people will like that. And I guess that's just like a preference. And then the final part of the demo was against Mega Victory Bell, which was a similar fight like the Mega Absol fight that I did at Worlds. I think that the difference is, I believe the Mega Absol fight, I only had Lucario to use, where in this, I think there was 3 Pokemon I could Mega. It was Absol and Houndoom, I think. I could be wrong about the Lucario. Swords Dance. That was like a move I spammed a lot during the Victory Bell fight. Just like in Legends Arceus, it didn't seem like you could spam Swords Dance. So in like in like Sword and Shield or Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee, Swords Dance would give you +2. You could use it 3 times in a row. That would give you +6. You would be doing like crazy amounts of damage if you could get +6. With my Absol against Victory Bell, it seemed like Swords Dance only worked once. And I'm almost positive that was the same in Legends Arceus, where you couldn't spam Swords Dance. You could like only use it once, but I think it lasted for like 2 turns. But I couldn't tell how long it lasted here, because again, a lot of like the moves, I just didn't have a good sense of like how they fully worked in the moment. Doesn't help that it's like everything, it's all action, so you're trying to like manage it all at the same time. But the item system in the game is really interesting. So you can open up your menu at any time, and you can use a revive, or you can use a hyper potion or whatnot. But when you use one item, your item bag goes on cooldown. So if I open up my bag to revive my Absol, now I can't use hyper potions or regular potions or another revive for I don't know, it seemed like 20 or 30 seconds. So it prevents the thing that I guess some people could do in Pokemon, which is just spam items. But I guess technically if you're battling the Elite Four in Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and you decide to use a hyper potion, that uses like your whole turn. Bruno can attack you, and then you can use a hyper potion, and Bruno can attack you, and you can use a hyper potion, and then all of a sudden Bruno's out of moves, and then you're safe to attack. Some of you all did that, I know. You just spam hyper potions until your opponent runs out of moves. In ZA, if you used a hyper potion, you're on a cooldown, and you can still dodge and roll and stuff. I still really like the Mega Battles, the Mega Battle Pokemon stuff. In that Mega Battle against Victory Bell, there was one of your guys from MZ, or I don't remember who it was. But I will say it felt like they did nothing the entire time. And I don't know if there's like a multiplayer aspect where you can actually have real people join you, or I don't know. I feel that way in like a lot of games, even like Monster Hunter Rise, when you had like a teammate join you for the story purposes. It didn't really feel like they were doing anything. They were just like kind of there for like story purposes. So I kind of felt the same way with like that. Yeah, I think those are like my overall thoughts. I think Pokemon does a really good job with their trailers of showing you exactly what you're getting. If you're curious of what more there is to this game, I think the marketing department is very good at being like, this is what you're getting. And the reason I say that is I would encourage you to go back and watch all the trailers for Legends Arceus after now playing Legends Arceus. And if you were to rewatch those trailers, that is pretty much exactly what we got. The same thing for like BDSP, the same thing for Sword and Shield, the same thing for Let's Go Pikachu, Let's Go Eevee. I think the trailers are pretty good at advertising the game you're going to get. And I walked away from ZA thinking that this game is not like Legends Arceus in the sense of catching Pokemon and filling a Pokedex. This game is more so battling. And I think that can turn off a lot of people who, one, don't really like Pokemon games for battles, but two, also don't like action-based games. I think one of the things I personally heard with Legends Arceus were people not liking the noble battles because they were so actiony, and I don't think there's any way to avoid that in this game. There is catching. I did catching during the day. There was a lot more battling, specifically at night, and with the team leader battles, and with the mega battles. I hope there's more beyond what they showed, but I think based off the, how many trailers for ZA were there? 3 or 4? They showed a lot of battling, and I walked away from my 1 hour session doing a lot of battling. Even going back to the catching section, you were still battling wild Pokemon with the same battle mechanics you would against trainers. I had a good time. I'm always optimistic, and I always like when Pokemon does something new. I really like that they tried something new with the agile and strong style stuff of Legends Arceus. I don't think it worked particularly well, but I'm glad they tried something new. It was at least interesting to go through. And there were parts of the game where I did want to genuinely play more. But yeah, I think that's all I have. I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff. I'm just going off the notes I wrote down. So I will be live later today on Twitch at around 11 a.m. Central Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. So if you want to come through my Twitch stream and ask any questions you have, because I played an hour and I feel like I barely scratched the surface, you can come through, ask me questions. If you can't make it to that stream, I'll take all the questions and then I'll put them back up on YouTube, and then you can watch that. So yeah, I'm looking at my notes and there's like a couple things I didn't talk about. There's like no spinning animation. You can't like spin in a circle like you can in like Sword and Shield. Tried it. Didn't work. That was a bummer. But thank you to the Pokemon Company International and Nintendo for the accommodations and flying me out and playing. I did enjoy my time with it. I feel like what I just said was like very sterile, but I just wanted to give you guys information, some of my early thoughts of like what I played. Again, I really like turn-based games. I do like some action games, but like that's one of the biggest appeals for me for Pokemon is like I just like turn-based RPGs. I really do. I'm excited to see more of the game, but thanks for watching. You can comment any questions you have too. I'll try to answer them in the comments as well if you can't make it to the Twitch stream. But anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.